Okay, so good morning. We are now in the second perek of Nedarim. We are at the top of Daf Tet Vav Amud Aleph, second line. We'll start with the first word on the second line. But before we do, let's just remind ourselves where we are so that we understand what the Gemara is about to do. So yesterday, we learned the second Mishnah of the second chapter of Nedarim, which indicated that making a vow, saying that you're sleeping or walking or speaking or cohabiting is going to be like a sacrifice. So that would cause all of these actions to become prohibited. Now, the Ran noted then, and he'll mention it again today, as we see that we'll see a Ran, that although that this prohibition was only rabbinic, because these things are not objects. And in general, from a biblical perspective, Nedarim require effectively physical objects to be the object of your neder. So if I say that this table, if I were to say that this table is like a sacrifice to me, so I'm not able to benefit from this table. If I, but I can't say, what I can't say is a metaphysical concept of, that essentially there's something that doesn't, and again, walking, talking, sleeping, all of those are good metaphysical. There is no object, that you can touch when you refer to sleep, speaking, or walking. And so as a result, all of those things are, can't be actually subjects of Nedarim. Now, from the Torah, but they can be subjects of Shavuot. A Shavuot is about me, is about my action, my taking of something. And so as a result, a Shavuah can 100% involve something that Ein Bo Mamish is the words that we use. And so out of concern that if we were to say that an oath about something that Ein Bo Mamish has no meaning whatsoever with respect to a neder, then maybe somebody will think that that's also true with respect to a shavua. And of course, that's not true. Not only is it not true, it's biblical that it's going to apply. And so as a result, the rabbis say we're going to apply a rabbinic prohibition on violating a neder she'ein bo mamish. Not because it's actually a valid neder from the Torah, but rather because if one were to use similar language, just changing neder to shvua, then it would apply, and so it would be effective. And so as a result, that's why the rabbis prohibited it. So, so now then that was the Mishnah that we learned at the end of the day yesterday, and the Gemara then outlined the concept of conditionality. Now, the condition that we talked about, there are two ways that you can have a condition. I can have a condition that happens after the time frame of my vow, and I can have a condition that happens before the time frame of my vow. Now, a condition before the time frame of my vow makes a lot of sense, and we can all understand. If I don't have a good night's sleep tonight, so I could vow that I'm going to go to sleep early tomorrow, and that way I'll, get the good night's sleep. So that would be a simple conditional vow that one could totally understand. The irony is that sometimes you can have, and it still works, is what we're going to see. I can have a vow where the conditionality is only after the time. I vow that I'm going to, again, I'm not actually vowing, I'm just saying it, giving the words. So someone can vow and say the words that one is going to go to sleep early tonight on the condition that one has a bad night's sleep tomorrow. So I'm vowing to, the person is vowing to go to sleep early tonight, but the condition doesn't happen until the next day. So we said in those two cases that, that what's the requirement with respect to the conditionality, right? So So if one makes a vow not to sleep today, if he sleeps tomorrow, so Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, says that, he's not allowed to sleep today. He's not allowed to do the action that might end up getting fulfilled if, in fact, the condition, which only happens tomorrow, takes place, right? So if I say that I'm going to give tzedakah today, if the Giants lose next week, so I have to give the tzedakah today because I don't know, maybe the Giants will end up losing next week. So the point is that's the attitude for Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. On the other hand, Rav Nachman says, no, look, now the Giants case may be different, but if it's in your control, and Rav Nachman may be viewing that this is in his control, then Rav Nachman says, listen, if you do sleep today, right, you'll be careful not to sleep tomorrow. And so you'll be careful, because if you do sleep today, so then you violated the vow. So if the vow were to come true and be an actual vow, you will have sinned. Knowing that, you'll know not to fulfill the condition. And so Rav Yehuda says we're worried that you won't treat a condition at the same level as a vow. But Rav Nachman says, no, we're not worried. We know that you'll know that if in fact you violate the condition, you'll have triggered a vow that you will have already violated, and so therefore you'll be careful. So again, everybody agrees that if the condition happens before the action associated with the vow, then you're allowed to violate the condition because you'll know now that you have a vow, and that's totally fine. You can make a vow. Again, not that we've said already several times that it's not a good thing to make a vow, but in any event, that will be okay. All right. So with all of that as background, the Gemara is now going to make, let's see exactly how many challenges are there going to be. 6 challenges. I got to write that down. Oh, I forgot my pen. All right. So there are going to be 6 challenges that we will cover today, and let's get started with them. So the first challenge is quite naturally from our Mishnah. And so we begin second line, Tedvavim and Aleph. Tanan, Konam sha'ani yashen, sha'ani mahalek, sha'ani medaber, etc. So if I make any of these vows, that I'm not going to sleep, that I'm not going to walk, or that I'm not going to speak. Hey, Chidami, what's the case? What are we talking about in our Mishnah? If you want to say that it literally means that he just used those words. So now again, the Ran explained that there's a problem here because if you just literally understand the words as they're written, it shouldn't be a good vow because it's a davar she'ein bo mamish. So that's what we're going to point out right now. Shani yashen min havi nidra, right? That my sleeping, that we say that I'm going to not sleep, right? Mi havi nidra, is that going to be a neder? V'hatanya, we have a brisa, chomer b'shvuas, that there's a stricter aspect of shvuas than nedarim. Shavuos chalos al davar sheyesh bo mamish al davar she'ein bo mamish. Ma she'ein came b'nedarim v'she'ein a davar she'ein bo v'she'ena davar she'ein bo mamishu. Right. So we said that there's a way that shavuos are more expansive than nedarim because a shavua applies even to things like sleeping and eating and walking and bicycling, etc. All the different kinds of actions that you can't actually point to an object. But when it comes to and so as a result, this is not actually a shvua. So as a result, El Amar Konam Einai B'Shena. So we're going to first reread our Mishnah and say that it's talking about where the person says that my eyes aren't going to sleep. So now he's created an object. He's made sleeping as something that relates to a particular object. My eyes are not going to close for sleeping. And so that's what he's saying. But now there's a problem, because if you say that our Mishnah is saying that he's not going to sleep forever, Mishav Kinan Le Ad Avar Isur Bal Yachel. Do we actually let him go until he actually goes to sleep? We have V'ha'amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Shavua Shalo Ishan Shlosha Yamim. If you make an oath, a shavua that says you're not going to sleep for 3 days, Malkin Oso V'yashin La'alter. We punish him right away. He's made a vow that we know he's going to violate, and so we don't treat it as a valid vow, and he goes to sleep right away. As the Ran says, top of the page, first line, end of the first line of the Ran, V'yashin La'alter Im Yirtzeh. That he can even go to sleep right away if he wants. She'ein shvua chalal la'asro klal. The shvua that he makes not to sleep for 3 days doesn't create any prohibition for him at all. V'hachanami, and here as well, heichi chayil nidra. There's nothing for this vow to be applied to because he's created a vow that he can't possibly keep. All right, so Ella de Amar. So as a result, we're going to say Konam Eine B'Shena Lemachar Im Ishan Hayom. So maybe we'll say that this is a traditional conditional vow, where the person says, my eyes are not going to sleep tomorrow if I sleep today. However, Ha Amrad Kol Be'isurim is Dazdahir. However, we already said before that everybody agrees that the prohibition of the neder is going to be something that somebody will be careful about. So there was no point to making that the topic of our Mishnah. If you make that the topic of our Mishnah, you haven't told us anything new and original. Ela pshita de amar konam einai b'shena hayom in ishan lamachar. So as a result, in order to try and figure out how our Mishnah could actually teach something that's in some way interesting, let's assume that our Mishnah is talking about where the person says that I'm not going to sleep today if I sleep tomorrow, meaning that the condition is tomorrow and the vow is for today. And yet, what did we say? The ilo nayem hayom, and if he doesn't sleep today, and if he doesn't sleep today, then there's no worry about not fulfilling the vow. He already fulfilled the vow. So it can't be talking about where he slept today. Ella lav b'denayim, but rather it must be that he slept today. So what is the case? So the final, so at this point, we're saying that our Mishnah is the following case. A person makes a vow that he's not going to sleep today if he sleeps tomorrow. And he's already slept today. So now our Mishnah is telling us that if he sleeps tomorrow, well, then he will have violated the prohibition of Bal Yachel, of having violated his words. So Alma, Ase, Denayim. So we see, but the bottom line is, for our relevance of our machlokas between Rav Yehuda Amarav and Rav Nachman, we see that our Mishnah allows the person to sleep today. And so since it's allowing the person to sleep today, it's following Rav Nachman's approach of saying that it's okay to violate the vow if the condition hasn't happened yet, because then you'll just make sure that you don't allow the condition to take place. So Alma Asi Denayim. So again, we see that it's okay to sleep today. Utuyuvta de Rav Yehuda, and this is a disproof of Rav Yehuda. So the Gemara answers, no, it does not have to be a disproof of Rav Yehuda, because rather Kikatani de Inayim. No, you could just understand that we're talking about a situation that where if the person slept today, we're not saying that he should or that he could affirmatively sleep. But if he did sleep today, then going to sleep the next day would constitute a violation of Bal Yachel. However, in fact, he should not sleep today, because at least that would be the way Rav would read our Mishnah. And so as a result, our Mishnah is not actually contradicting. And now that we gave that explanation, we're now going to give Ravina's explanation of our Mishnah, which changes everything completely and says exactly what the Ran said yesterday. Glad to hear. We'll talk about it afterwards, okay, Mark? So James isn't on today, so maybe tomorrow we'll see him. Okay, so Kikatan. So what is Ravina Amar? Ravina says, La'olam Kidagatani. Really, We can say that the vow in our Mishnah that we learned yesterday is about sleeping directly. And so the vow is not about something that is yesh bo mamish, rather it's something that's ein bo mamish. Umay bal yachel. And when our Mishnah says that you have violated the prohibition of desecrating one's words, it's midrabanan. It means that you're violating it rabbinically. And so if we take a look at the third of the medium wide lines in the Ran, where it says Ravina Amar La'olam Kidikatani. So it means Kalomar Shani Yashain, Velo Ka'amar, Einai Bishene, Einai Bishina. So the point is that we're saying that now the vow in our Mishnah is talking about sleep directly, and it's not talking about the eyes. Mamish, that even though sleep itself has no substance, there's no object to it. You could still have the prohibition of violating one's word, midirabanan, from a rabbinic perspective. The ashkachana tana the tani b'derabanan lo yachal dvaro. As we will see that there's a place where the rabbis say that there's a rabbinic violation of not violating one's words. Mishum haki, and so that's why Tana. And now he makes a very key point to understanding our Mishnah. That is why our Mishnah Tana b'masnisin b'nedarim harei zeh below yachal. That's why our Mishnah, the Mishnah that we learned at the end of the day yesterday, Mark, says that you violate the prohibition of lo yachel. It does not say below yachel dvaro, that he should not violate his words. Velo tana asar. It didn't use the word asar. Asar means prohibited. While lo yachel dvaro means that he shouldn't violate his word. Kidikatani b'shvuas. In our Mishnah that we're going to learn at the very beginning of tomorrow, we're going to have the same basic parallel structure of our first Mishnah of the Perek, where it talks about making different kinds of oaths, and and that Mishnah is going to say use the word asur. It's not going to use the word that you violated lo yachel dvaro. So mishum de b'shvuas aser medina, because when it comes to an oath of shavua, then you're prohibited from the Torah. Ubenedarim lo mitzar ela midarabanan. But when it comes to a neder, that would only be prohibited rabbinically. Mishum latod deval yachel. Because that's what we're talking about when you're talking about the violation of lo yachel. So now, continuing on, so we say, Umi ika bal yachel midurabanan. So how do I know that in fact bal yachel could mean a rabbinic prohibition? So yes, in fact, it can be a rabbinic prohibition. V'hatanya, because we have a brisa, dvarim hamutarim ba'achirim nahagu bahen iser. If you have something that is actually permitted, but people treat it as prohibited. And examples are noted here. For example, when it comes to the 3 weeks between Shivasar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, that we have a variety of different prohibitions that some of them are technically only apply from a halakhic standpoint for a shorter period, but we have taken on the prohibition to extend it for a longer period. So and you're not allowed to permit them. You're not allowed to say that they're permitted in front of the people who are observing it as a prohibition. Shenamar lo yachel dvaro. You should not desecrate your word. And of course, in this instance, it's talking about just a rabbinic prohibition. And so we see that there's situations where you can do it. And now the note here, based on the Ran in Maseches Psachim, says that this only applies when the person who is treating the object, the specific thing, as prohibited, knows that it's just a custom that they're prohibiting it. If they think that it's a biblical prohibition or a specific explicit rabbinic prohibition, then you would be allowed to point out their mistake. That you would be allowed to do. But to just tell them that something is permitted when they know that it's permitted, but they're treating it as something that's prohibited, that it would be so that would be a violation of lo yachel dvaro, because essentially what the people have done is they have adopted for themselves, almost like an oath, a prohibition. And so as a result, when you adopt for yourself a good practice, it's almost like you've made a vow. And that is why it's very a good advice to make the comment beli neder if you do something that you don't intend to adopt as a general practice. So that was challenge number one to Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. Now we turn to challenge number two. And all of these challenges, all 6 of the challenges will fail. So 6 challenges, 6 fails. Let's take a look at challenge number 2. So Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah that we will have in about a month and a little bit. It's on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. So Tanan, Sha'at nehenes li ad haPesach im telchi lebeit avich ad hachag. So a husband is upset with the frequency, presumably, we'll see what the oath means in a moment. A husband is upset with the frequency with which his wife goes to visit her father's house. And so he says to her, listen, you're not going to be allowed to benefit from me until Pesach. Now, let's say this is a month before Pesach. So you're not allowed to benefit from me over the coming month if you go to your father's house before Sukkot, before Chag. Well, Sukkot is a lot further from now. So we won't know for a fact whether this vow takes effect until after the period of the vow is concluded. And yet, what do we say? Halcha lifnei haPesach. If she goes before Pesach, asura b'hanaso ad haPesach, then in fact it will be prohibited for her to benefit. Yeah, we're talking about Passover, exactly. Passover is the next big Jewish holiday that we're not going to be allowed to do work. It's like a Sabbath kind of holiday. The next time that we have, soon we'll have Hanukkah. Before we have Pesach, we'll have Hanukkah. That's 100%. And then we'll have, don't forget about Purim. But when we talk about the next big holiday, that's going to be Pesach. And so if somebody were to say, like right now, you can't benefit from me until Pesach, but if you go to your father's house before Sukkot, well, Sukkot is a lot longer from now. So as a result, if in fact she goes before Pesach, well, then she's not going to be allowed to benefit from her husband the rest of the time before Pesach. But what does that imply? Halcha lifnei Pesach asura lo halcha. It implies that if she did not go to before Pesach, well, then she would be allowed to benefit, right? Lo, she would be allowed to benefit. And what does that imply? That implies that we're not worried about the vow if it's possible to avoid the condition later on. That is exactly what Rav Nachman says. So this again is a challenge to Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. So what would he say? So Amar Rabbi Abba answers on behalf of Rabbi Yehuda and says the following: Halcha lifnei Pesach asura veloka. No, what this Mishnah is telling you is that if in fact she went before Pesach and then she benefited, well, then she's going to get lashes. She's going to be punished. But lo halcha asura ba'alma. But if she did not go to her father's house yet, well, she's not going to get punished for violating an oath, because we don't know whether the oath is taking effect yet, because she hasn't gone to her father's house. But it will still be prohibited for her to benefit. So as a result, that can be how Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav can read this Mishnah. And so as a result, it's not a challenge. Well, one second, Ema Seifa, that Mishnah continues as we have the third challenge for Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. So, because what does the Mishnah say at the end? Achar haPesach, if after Pesach the wife goes to her father's house, beval yachel dvaro, she has violated the prohibition of not desecrating his word. V'i delo isani lifnei Pesach. Now, if she didn't derive benefit before Pesach, mi'ika bal yachel, if she didn't actually ever derive benefit, then who cares that she goes to her husband's, her father's house after Pesach? She didn't violate the oath. So it must be, Ela Pshita de Ishani. It must be that she did have benefit from her husband's. So Alma Mishani. So we see that in fact she's allowed to get benefit. That's what Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, and it's not what so that's what Rav Nachman says, and it's not consistent with Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. So utiyufta to Rav Yehuda. So again, we've got a refutation of Rav Yehuda. So as we said before, with respect to our own Mishnah, we say now, Ki Katani, what's the situation? Is honey hare zebaval yachel devaro. No, we can just understand that Mishnah as saying if in fact she benefited from her husband, then if she were to go to her father's house, she will have violated Bal Yachel. But she, in fact, should not benefit from her husband before Pesach as much as to the extent that she can avoid doing so. All right. So that was challenge number 3. Now we're going to continue with that Mishnah that's on Daf Nun Zion. That Mishnah continues to Nun Zion and Bet, and now we continue with that Mishnah and we say, Tanan sha'at nehenet li ad hachag im telchi lebeit avich ad Pesach. Now we do it in the reverse, in the traditional order, right? I say, you can't benefit me all the way until Sukkot if you go to your father's house between now and Pesach, right? So a classic ordering. First is the condition, then is the well, that is going to be a big holiday, but this particular person who's being very mean to his wife is not worried about Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah was not a holiday because it was a short holiday. It wasn't a holiday that you would go to visit your family as much for. So as a result, there's less of a concern. Yom Kippur, same with Yom Kippur. Sukkot is a big holiday. Sukkot is 8 days from the Torah, and we celebrate it in 9 days. So that's a bigger holiday. As opposed to Yom Kippur, which is 1 day, and Rosh Hashanah, which is 2 days. Okay, but in any event, let's take a look and see what happens. So, if in fact she goes before Pesach, asura bahanaso anachag. Naturally, she is going to be prohibited to benefit from her husband all the way until Sukkot. Umuteres lelech achar Pesach, but she is permitted to go to her father's house after Pesach because the oath is only conditioned on not going to her father's house before Pesach. So what do we say? So halcha, we see that if she went asura, she would be forbidden. Lo halcha, but if she did not yet go to her father's house before Pesach, what's the implication? Lo, she would not be forbidden to go to her father's house. So that implies that it is okay to violate the oath as long as you have not triggered the condition. So even though because the condition is later, it's okay. You can violate the oath now and worry about the condition later. So again, that's a challenge to Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, because Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav says you're not allowed to violate the oath even if the condition is later. So Amar Rava explains on behalf of Rav and Rav Yehuda, Hu hadin da'afilo lo halcha asura. No, the truth is, again, even if she didn't go to her father's house before Pesach, she would not be allowed to benefit from her husband. But halcha asura veloka. But if she did go, then she's going to get lashes as well as they're going to be a prohibition. But lo halcha asura ba'alma. But if she did not go then to her father's house yet, she's only forbidden. She won't get lashes because she hasn't violated anything yet. Okay, so that was challenge number 4, and again, successfully defended on behalf of Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. Meisvei, next case, again, challenge number 5. Kikar, now we challenge based on a brisa. Kikar zo alai hayom im elech lemakom ploni lemachar. I'm going to be forbidden to eat this piece of bread today if I go to some place tomorrow. Well, then, achal, if he ate the bread today, then he's subject to the prohibition of going tomorrow, because if he goes tomorrow, then he'll have retroactively violated his oath today. So mikatani ochel. So again, we have this as a challenge to Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, because it implies that if he ate, that suggests that he could eat. So the Gemara answers, no, that's not true. Mikatani ochel, it didn't say he may eat. It said achal katani. It says he ate, meaning that it's on some level looking at it from a conditional perspective. It's not that he may go ahead and eat. It's that if he did eat, if he violated the rabbinic prohibition of violating the oath before it even we know whether it took place or not, then he has to be very careful about not triggering the oath. But he shouldn't violate the oath in the first place. That it's only if he ate that he's subject to not having to go. So but then 1 second, the Brisa continues and says, if he went, lo. So again, he's not the kasha Rav Yehuda. So question number 6 for us is again, we see that sorry for not scrolling. So if the person went to the place and specified the next day, then he's subject to Bal Yachel. So again, what's this issue? From the fact that the Brisa never says that he may go if he didn't eat, doesn't the Brisa imply that eating is permitted, which contradicts Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav? So again, we're going to answer that question. V'kashil Rav Yehuda. So Amar Lach Rav Yehuda would say to you, no, Hua Din Delisnim Mehalech. The truth is that if in fact, really it could have taught us that he may go. So I did the Katani Reisha Achal Delo Mitne Le Ochel, right? That since it said that he ate and it didn't, it could not say he may eat because that's not true. So as a result, Taina Sefi Halach, if he went. So as a result, the point is that although it never says explicitly that he shouldn't, if he didn't benefit, if he didn't eat, then he may go. The point is that it really is true that that's the case, but the language is just meant to be parallel. So therefore, we've had all 6 challenges, and Rav Yehuda, in the name of Rav, has survived all of them. So just so interesting to see. Now, I just want to take a look back. It certainly seems that at least based on the placing of the Dalit in the Ein Mishpat near Mitzvah, that it seems like the halacha actually follows Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, that all these challenges are meant to show that in fact that's the case. All right, we're almost done. We've got just one last piece. So Amar, so now Ha'omer Leisha Konam Shani Misham Sheikh, that I'm not, in our Mishnah we said, what happens if the wife says that I'm not going, the husband says to the wife that I'm not going to have marital relations with you. Again, this is an object that doesn't have any mamish to it. And so as a result, we're currently understanding it's a rabbinic prohibition. But 1 second, there is how could he make that? We say Harezeh Beval Yachel Dvaro. He's subject to the prohibition of violating his word, meaning that he's not allowed to have marital relations with her. So, but V'hamishtabed Bla Midoraisa. But he has an obligation to have marital relations. Husbands have an obligation to have marital relations with their wife if their wife wants it. He's not allowed to diminish her clothing, her food, her clothing, and onasa, it refers to her appointed times, which means that he's not allowed to, which is understood by the Gemara based on our learning in last, as we saw previously in Maseches Kedushin, that in Maseches Ksuvos, as we saw in Maseches Ksuvos, that you're not allowed to that onasa refers to having marital relations. So you're obligated to have marital relations. So how could you violate that? So ba'omer, so the ba'omer hanas tashmishi elach, that what we're saying is that the husband didn't actually prohibit her benefit, right? The originally way we said is konam is my cohabiting with you, is saying that it should be treated. We understood originally that this was a phrase that the husband says to the wife, that for you, having relations to me should be like a sacrifice, meaning that it would be like a sacrifice, which is something that you're not allowed to benefit from. So you would not be allowed to benefit from having marital relations with me. Now that would be a problem because I have an obligation to you. So ba'omer honas tashmishech alai. So instead, what we're saying is that I'm prohibiting myself and saying that my benefit, I'm not allowed to benefit having relations with you. So let's take a look in the Ran because he does a beautiful job explaining this, and then he asks two interesting questions. So Kolomar, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up in the medium lines of the Ran. Kolomar di'i de asar gufei ilava. Hachinami lo matzi avid, that if in fact he tried to prohibit himself to her, so then he would not be allowed to do so, because he owes that to her. And it would be like prohibiting your friend's object to your friend. Okay, so I want to just remind ourselves that when it comes to Nedarim, there are several interesting things that you can do. I can prohibit you, Mark, from benefiting from something that belongs to me. I can prohibit myself from benefiting from something belongs to me. I can prohibit myself from something that belongs to you. But what I can't do is I can't prohibit you from something that belongs to you. And that makes total sense, right?
It certainly does.
It makes total sense. So what the Ran is saying is that if I try to prohibit my wife from benefiting from marital relations with me, I am effectively attempting to prohibit her from something that belongs to her. And so as a result, I'm not allowed to say that. Aval hacha. So continuing on in the Ran, aval hacha, ba'omer hanos tashmishech alai. But if I say I'm not allowed to benefit from having marital relations with you, askinan shehu oser al atzmo tashmisha, right? Ula asur al atzmo harishus biyado. You are allowed to prohibit to yourself anything. You could prohibit yourself to something that belongs to you or that doesn't belong to you. And so as a result, he does have the ability to prohibit that. Ukidarav kahana. And we're going to see now, like Rav Kahana. So let's take a look and see Rav Kahana's statement, and then we'll continue in the Ran. The Amar Rav Kahana tashmishe alecha. If in fact a woman, this statement is about a woman speaking. If the woman says that my cohabitation is considered like a sacrifice to you, so kofen osa umishamashto, then she's still required to have marital relations with him. Deshabude mishabdaslai, because again, her marital relations to him, her being willing to have marital relations to him, is something that belongs to him. And so hanash tashmichka alai. However, if she were to say that I'm not allowed to benefit from having marital relations with you, well then asur. Then they're not allowed to have marital relations. Because you're not allowed to feed to somebody something that's prohibited. So let's take a look back in the Ran. Again, second from the last of the medium-sized lines. Ukidarav Kahana, at the end of that line, it says, Ukidarav Kahana de Amarsha, Isha Yechola Asur Hanas Tashmish Ba'ala Aleha, right? A woman is allowed to prohibit to herself the benefit of having marital relations with her husband on herself. The Kavan in Nedarim, Mishkach Ravsa, or I'm sorry, Ravcha Chayal Umemela Pakashibuda. So because she did something that's allowed, she prohibited herself. Indirectly, it ends up eliminating the obligation in the other direction as well. V'im Tomar. So now the Ran asks two interesting questions, and with this we will conclude. The question number one: V'im Tomar v'ha hind nedara derabbananhu. This neder, we said, is only rabbinic because it's a davar she'ein bo mamish, right? There's no substance to it. The hanas tashmish leis ba mamasha, because it doesn't have any substance. Veleka lememar de baomer konam gufcha alai mishtashmish askinan, and we shouldn't say that we're talking about where I don't want to benefit from your body from a sexual perspective. Dumya de shani yashain shani midaber kitani, because we're comparing it to our case of our Mishnah. So Kitani Lava, Ukma Ravina, Bebal Yachel Midirabanan. And Ravina has established that we're talking about it from a rabbinic. But Keva de Midirabanan, Baalma who Hechi Chayel Nidara delay se Ela Midirabanan. How could the rabbis allow this vow, which is only a rabbinic vow, because it doesn't apply biblically because there's no substance to it, Baalma, La'afkuye mitzvahs ona u mitzvahs periorivia. How could the rabbis allow this vow to effectively prevent us from fulfilling two mitzvahs in the Torah: the mitzvah of having marital relations with your wife and the mitzvah of having a procreation? So the Ran answers a very, very, very important concept in rabbinic doctrine. Yesh lomar keven dinidara miachayo mimela pekai laha pekai lahu hanach mitzvus de chachamim matnin laakor davar min Torah b'sheva al tasek. Because it is only indirect, and the rabbis are allowed to effectively do something that says sheva al tasek, sit and don't do anything. They're allowed to uproot a biblical commandment by saying don't do anything. For example, on Rosh Hashanah, we blow the ram's horn. I know that Mark loves the ram's horn. So we blow the ram's horn, but we don't blow it on Shabbos. And so, but how can we not blow it on Shabbos? The Torah says we got to blow it. The answer is that the rabbis are allowed to tell us not to do a mitzvah in the Torah if they use the language of Sheva al Tasa with a caveat of not uprooting it completely. So the point is that here they're effectively saying Sheva al Tasa in this situation. And so as a result, that is why it's, even though it's only a rabbinic vow, we'll say that it's permitted. All right, so that was question number one. Question number two, and with that we'll conclude. With the answer, we'll conclude. Why is, if I say I'm not going to have marital relations with you, I'm not going to benefit from marital relations with you, why is there any prohibition at all? We have a concept in the Gemara that says that our mitzvahs were not given for our benefit, not given for our physical benefit. They were given for our spiritual benefit, but they weren't given for our physical benefit. So if it's not given for our physical benefit, so I should be able to do marital relations as a mitzvah. The mitzvah wasn't given for my physical benefit. So let me still, even though I said that I'm not going to benefit from marital relations, I should still be able to do it because mitzvahs were not given for my benefit. So yesh lomar the ki amrin mitzvahs lav lahanos nitnu, that we're not understanding the concept of mitzvahs lav lahanos nitnu, that they weren't given for our physical benefit. Hani mili lomar she'ein kiyum hamitzvahs chashav hana, that the fulfillment of the mitzvah itself is not going to be a physical benefit that is going to be viewed as something that is that has a legal benefit. But if in fact you do benefit, that's still called a benefit. So if I say, if somebody were to say that they don't want to benefit from eating on Shabbos, right? The point is that even though eating on Shabbos is a mitzvah because you're being oneg Shabbos and benefiting from Shabbos, that eating is still something that you enjoy doing. And so as a result, that's still going to be considered hana, and therefore that would still, and this helps us understand something that we learn about elsewhere in Rosh Hashanah, Beperek Ra'u based in, where it says in Rosh Hashanah, Hanoder hana min hama'ayan, that if one prohibits themselves from benefiting from a spring of water. So now they have to go and do tefillah. They're tameh right now. They want to do tefillah to become tahor. Are they allowed to be tovel in that water where they say that they're not going to benefit from the water? So if so what do we say? So tovel bo b'miyot gashamim. So you can tovel in it in the winter time. In the winter, when it's the rainy season, you're allowed to tovel, because is anybody going to enjoy? Now, maybe people who actually go into the, who are those, what are they called? The polar bears. Thank you. Those polar bears who dive into the into the Atlantic on New Year's Day, on Christmas Day or New Year's Day, whatever. Anyway, so those people, so they maybe also shouldn't be tovel in even in Yemot HaGeshamim. But avalo b'Yemot HaChama. But for the ordinary person, the person who only is going to have any enjoyment from doing the tevilah in the summertime, so then if you say you're not going to benefit from this spring, so then you're not allowed to go to use that spring as your makom tevilah in the summertime, because presumably you would benefit from being in. So these were the two questions that the Ran asked, and again, it highlights this beautiful combination that the Ran offers. I hope that people are enjoying our learning of the Ran. It has both the Rashi component and the Tosos component, and we have it all together, and it does it in a very nice, clear language. So anyway, the next Mishnah, again, as we saw, we referenced it earlier today. The next Mishnah is going to talk all about Shvuot, and is the parallel to the opening Mishnah of the second Perek. And if you want to learn what it has to say, come and join us tomorrow.
A comment and a question.
Please. Okay, well, we'll talk about it in the dinner in 1 second, but Charlie's got a question on the computer. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, first a comment. What you said about blowing shofar on Shabbat on Rosh Hashanah, that's the position of the Bavli, and I believe we poskin that way. But Yerushalmi thinks that it is biblically prohibited to blow shofar outside of the temple on Rosh Hashanah.
Interesting. All right, Shkach, thank you for sharing that.
But that's not brought up here. I don't think it appears in the Bavli at all. And second, if somehow I manage to come up with a shavua or a neder where I am prohibited to have relationships with my wives, am I not then obligated to offer her a get?
I actually think that we have covered that, and I believe that the answer is yes, but I don't remember exactly where we saw it. But I think that I'm pretty sure that the answer is yes, but I can't point you to.
I don't remember where. Yeah,
but I'm pretty sure that we have seen that over the last few Masechtot,
right.
Whether it was in Yevamos or Ksuvos, but I'm pretty sure that we covered that.
I think it was somewhere in Ketubot, and I don't remember where.
Yeah, I don't remember where either, but hopefully if this gets posted so that somebody can put it into the chat. So anyway,
thanks.
Have a wonderful day. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and we'll pick up with the Mishnah at the bottom of Tedvav Mabet, God willing, tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Mark, you were saying.